we had whoever all the proclamations. Whoever had the radio had to return the radio to this place by this and this date. If a radio would be found after this date, the person will be killed. And it happened that some people didn't give back the radios, that later they were found out in the ghetto, they were found out that they had a radio and they were killed on the spot. We had to stand in line for everything. I'll never forget, we stood in line for bread in front of a bakery. In the morning, the whole family, my siblings, my mother, we stood in the line for bread. In the morning, when the German police came to keep order, our so-called Christian neighbors, you know, they came out and pointed, the Germans, Jude, and the German would come with a rifle, raus, and after standing all night long for bread, we didn't get any bread. So things became so desperate that my brother and I, we decided we'll try to go to Russia anyway. So we went, we got some tickets, we were going from Lodz to Warsaw. And my oldest sister came along. She was married, she had a son. At that time he was about like 4 years old. So she came along because at that time the Germans didn't bother and women, only men. So we got on the train, one station before we came to Warsaw, one station before the Germans came on the train, they threw me off the train. So my sister and my brother, they kept on going to Warsaw, but we had a cousin in Warsaw. So the next day, I had to spend the night at the whole team at this depot, this train depot. And I don't remember next day, I don't remember whether it was a passenger train or freight train. I finally got to Warsaw and we met over at my cousin's place. From there, my sister went to the border to see if it's okay to cross the border. She came back, she says, no, you can't cross the border now because the Germans, whoever come close to the border, the Germans shoot. So she went back to Lodz, to the family, and my brother and I, we stayed in Warsaw. And again, the Germans again came and you know, picked us up and took us to work, you know, with beatings and stuff, you know. I'm not going to go into details of that. So we stayed in Warsaw until I think it was like the end of March. We saw in the paper that the Germans are creating a ghetto in Lodz. So my brother and I, we went back to Lodz. After a little while, the Germans picked the most dilapidated area of the city. It's called Baute, the poorest place. They surrounded it with barbed wire and put down a sentry, a German soldier, every 90 meters around the ghetto. And we had to leave our place to go to the ghetto. But we couldn't go, let's say, we had to take our stuff with us to move to the ghetto. We couldn't go in, take stuff, and come back and take again. Once we got in inside the ghetto, we couldn't get out. So my brother and I, we built a, you know what, I'll take this out when I speak, it bothers me. So my brother and I, we built a big sled and we put our belongings, whatever we had, mattresses, whatever, on one sled, on top, real high. My brother and I, there was still some snow on the ground. My brother and I, we pulled, and my sisters and my mother, they walked on both sides to keep it from tipping over. Once we got in the ghetto, we couldn't go back. My mother had a cousin in the ghetto who lived in the ghetto before the war. That was her place. She was on the 6th floor, and she had 2 rooms. So she gave us one of the rooms. So we got into one room. We were 7 people because my brother-in-law was taken away already by the Germans someplace to a labor camp or whatever. So before we got to the ghetto. So we were 7 people in one room that was about 6 feet wide and about 10, 11 feet deep, with a window at the end there, and a closed wall on one side, closed in. The one side, one of the walls was the end of the building. So during the winter, when we didn't have anything for heat, we didn't have any coal or anything to heat, so we all slept together. And in the morning when we got up, the whole wall was covered with snow. From our breath, it would settle on the cold wall, and in the morning, the whole wall was covered with snow. The water in the tea kettle froze during the night. There was no, on the 6th floor, there was no running water and no toilet. Before the war, there was running water, there was a toilet, but during the winter, 39, 40, nobody took care of it, and it froze. So we had to go down 6 flights of steps to the outhouse when we needed to. In the ghetto, everybody had to work. Who didn't work didn't live. It was as simple as this. The Germans came in and took all the people who couldn't work. They took the old people, they took the children, and then hospital, the sick people. People who were late, I didn't see it, but people who lived across from the hospital, later they told us that the Germans were throwing out the people from the hospital, from the 2nd and 3rd floor, thrown out through the window on the trucks below. And our rations, we would get a loaf of bread for 8 days. I would cut it in 8 pieces, eat a piece of bread. I was hungry, I borrowed a piece of bread from the next day. I buy a piece of the next day. After that, by the end of the last 2 days, I didn't have any bread at all left. So I would go out to the field and pick some out of grass, some leaves from the grass. I would pick it up, bring it home, and we had a little stove there, a little portable stove for coal, and Mother would cook it up like spinach. I would stuff myself with that stuff, I got sick from it. So things were getting worse all the time. The Germans also, we also had in the ghetto, we had a jail. And when the Germans came in, every time they came for more people to take, if they knew somebody was hiding out or whatever, and whoever couldn't work, they would take them away. Even in the jail, there were a few people in the jail. And who were the criminals in jails? Somebody stole a little piece of bread. The police, the Jewish police, put them in the jail. And then when the Germans came in for more victims, they took them out from the jail. So everybody had to work. I worked in a lumber mill. My brother worked in a lumber mill. Know what a lumber mill is? Mm-hmm. Where they work on woodwork machinery, cut the wood. Adze, cut the adze on a machine. Yeah. And one of my sisters worked in a place where they brought us for our 2 weeks that we got a ration, so we would get some vegetables. Most of the time, sometimes they would bring us some, most of the time were rotten vegetables. Sometimes I brought them some leaves from beets, from the red beets, just the leaves, not the beets, the leaves. And this was every 2 weeks there was a ration. We would get a little bit of flour and two potatoes for 2 weeks, you know. And this was my rations. And every day people died of starvation. People were dying, and you were walking to work and you saw people lying on the ground. We didn't have any milk or any cheese, any butter, nothing like this. So our bones became very brittle. When somebody fell, he broke something, and that was the end of it. That was the end of it. Nobody would dare call. We were afraid we would go over and try to help him, we'll fall down too. So people were dying. The wagon from the cemetery was coming by horse, you know, from house to house and picking up the dead people, putting a tag at with the name and the ankle, and then people who came home from work, they would go to the cemetery for the funeral. As I said, things were getting real bad. My sister, for instance, my younger sister worked in a factory where they call it the straw factory, a straw resort, where the girls and women were plaiting straw to make boots for the German army for the winter, boots. And so then, and I, for instance, when I went to work, I would take along a pot and a spoon, because at lunchtime we would get a little bit of soup, and we had to have, you know, they said we had got to have like 4 pieces of potatoes in there. So when the woman in the window, I put in my pot, when she poured in that stuff, I just checked right away to see if I had those 4 pieces of potatoes. If I didn't have, I told her, if I have only 3, so she would add another piece. But some guys were more enterprising, they put a piece of screen on top of the pot. When she poured in, the water ran right through, so they knew right away if they had those 4 pieces of potatoes. And then later when we got home, we stole some sawdust into the pot. We took it home. Once we got to our building, see, in our city, the water system wasn't like in Denver, where it's a one system. In our city, every house had its own well. Every house. And it was pumping up to the top floor. There was a big container with a pipe sticking out to the wall. And when they started out the pump, when it was full, the water started coming out. Then the janitor knew that it's full, and they shut it off. So when we came home from work, there was no water because it was frozen. Everything was frozen up there in our apartment. So we had to stand in line and fill up the bucket of water and carry it up to the apartment. In the beginning, it wasn't too bad, but then we got weaker and weaker. There were no medication, nothing. I'll never forget. My mother got sick, and I took my mother to a doctor, and he gave her a prescription for 1 kilogram of potato peelings. That was a prescription from a doctor. 1 kilogram of potato peelings. And I'll never forget, we had a little light in our room. I woke up in the middle of the night, and there I saw my mother was sitting there and cleaning those potato peelings. I said, "Mom, what are you doing, Geh schlafen, geh schlafen."
Go to sleep in Yiddish.
Saban, good job.
The Saban is Yiddish originally.
So then in 1942, in February 1942, they took away my older sister, my nephew. They took him away, never to be seen again. Then the same year, 42 in September, they had what they call a sperre, a curfew. They came into our yard. We lived in a complex, it was a closed yard. Before there were 102 apartments in that building. The Germans came in, shot in the air, and said, "Alle Juden runter," all Jews down. My mother was sick in bed. She couldn't go down. Above ours, above the 6th floor where we lived, there was an attic. An attic where in the normal days, the women would take their clothes up to the attic to dry the clothes, because the walls of the attic were not solid walls, they were strips of wood. And then the little windows there from the building, so the air was circulating, so that's where women would take their clothes to the attic in normal time. So when they came, when we had to go down, the Germans in 42, what they called the sperre, curfew, we had to go down. My mother couldn't go down, so we took her upstairs to the attic, put down a chair behind the chimney, and we locked her in. And we hid a key, so we knew where the key was. We didn't know who was going to come back. And we started walking down. And I'll never forget, on the way down, my brother, who had jet black hair, but he was very pale, like white. So my sister, I'll never forget it, she kept on pinching his cheeks, pinching his cheek to give it a little bit of a color, to make it look a little bit alike, you know. So we finally came down to a selection. They decided again who's going to live and who's going to die. So luckily I was the first one. I come in front of the Germany with a stick under my chin. I said, "Where do you work?" I said, "In the lumber mill." They let me go, then my brother and my 2 sisters. So luckily we got all through, we ran upstairs and took my mother back from the attic back into bed in our room. That was 1942, or September 42. Things were getting worse every day. Worse, that I would see more and more people in the streets, dying in the streets. And we had to go to work, and we had to fulfill quotas, so many things to do, you know. So in the beginning it was hard, but later we started cheating. They were like, I was working on a bandsaw. You know what a bandsaw is? Yeah. A machine that cuts out different shapes. We used to make toys, and was cut out toys for children, not for Jewish children. They took away all the Jewish children. For the German children, I was making toys. And then later I was cutting out shower slippers for the German army. I had to make like 200 pairs a day. So it was hard work. That was it. So in 1943, as I said, the rations were getting smaller, and more people every day, more people died. Then in 1944, in March of 1944, the Germans liquidated that place where my sisters were working with the vegetables. They liquidated that place, and they took all the people who worked there, they took them to a munitions factory in a city not far from Lodz. A city by the name of Częstochowa. That's what we heard, that they're taking it. We were not sure if it's true, but the Jewish police, they told us that that's where they're taking them. That was 1944, in February 1944. Then in 1944, June the 6th, who knows what June the 6th was? 1944. D-Day. That was D-Day, the day of the invasion. On that day, my brother died of starvation, June the 6th. When I came home from work, I went upstairs and mother told me that he died. They took him to the cemetery, so my mother couldn't go to the cemetery. So my younger sister and I, we were the only three left now. My sister and I, we went to the cemetery. There was a rabbi that said Kaddish, you know, for the burial. And then the Russian army started coming close, and the Germans started liquidating the ghetto. And we had to go to the train station to go. They told us, they came to our workplace. They told us that meine liebe Juden, my dear Jews, you know, in German, the head of the ghetto, his name was Bibov. He said, meine liebe Juden, my dear Jews, you're going to go to Germany to, you know, with a family. You'll have a better life, and this. We didn't believe him, of course. And we had to go to the train station. I didn't want to go to the train station. We were hiding out. In our room, there was we had a little china cabinet. China cabinet, you know what a china cabinet is?
Yeah.
So I moved away the china cabinet from the wall. There was one opening at the one end where the table there, put a table there. And when we heard the Germans come up the stairs, we heard them talking. My mother went in there, sat down on the chair, and my sister was afraid. She was fainting all the time. She was afraid, hungry and afraid. She went behind the chair, behind the cabinet, and I took the table to the open end. There was only one open end. I took our bedding, put it on the top of the table, cover up the whole thing. I remember the Germans came in the room. We heard they were as closer than I and him. You know. We heard them talk, you know, and they left. We stood there behind, I don't remember how long, but quite a bit, until somebody came, and another neighbor who was hiding someplace else, he came and told us the Germans are gone, we can come out. So we stayed another 2 days. We didn't have any food left. And so mother says, what can we do? I have no choice. What can we do? We have to go. So mother packed up some things, whatever we could, to carry a few bags. She put in even some sheets for shrouds. You know, how do you sell it in English? Shrouds.
Shrug?
Shrouds. In Yiddish, they call it tachlichen. You know, the Jews are buried in the, what do you call it in Hebrew? Yeah, that's what. So she put some stuff in there. We carried a few bags, whatever we had left. We just carried, and we started walking towards the train station. Mother could hardly walk. We walked a little bit, then it got dark, so we couldn't continue. We got in the hallway. We spent the night on the 3rd floor in that little place there. And then in the morning, we came to the train station, and there were boxcars with planks going up to the boxcar. They gave us a little piece of bread, and we got into that boxcar. I ate that bread right away. My sister did too, you know. And then they shut the doors of the boxcar, and the train started moving. It came to a stop in the middle of the night. Came to a stop. Dark, you know. So there was a little window in that boxcar, a little middle in the corner. So they hoisted out somebody to look out to see where we at, and they saw the electrified barbed wires of Auschwitz. So we never, in the ghetto, we were cut off from the world, you know. We didn't know what was going on outside our ghetto, because we had Jewish money. As a matter of fact, I forgot to take it. I still, after the war, I found some Jewish money. 10 marks and 20 marks. On one side was a menorah, The other side was a Magen David with the signature of the elders of the Jews, Rumkos Gechaim. Yeah, he was a sign that with that money we would get, we had to pay this money for our rations every 2 weeks, you know. So the train finally stopped, and he said, he looked out, he saw some kind of a camp. And in the ghetto, we never heard about Auschwitz. We never heard about Auschwitz. We knew about Dachau, because Dachau was created in 1933. So we knew about Dachau, which were political, you know, Germans were imprisoned there. So the boxcar kept on going back and forth, and finally it stopped, and the gate opened up. It was like the gate of hell opened up. Screaming, raus, raus, out, till they started pulling us down, you know. I jumped down and I helped mother come down, my sister, and right away they started pulling me away from mother and my sister. Men on this side, women on this side. At that point, I'll never forget, as long as I live, that piece of bread that we got before we got in the boxcar. I ate it right away, my sister, my mother didn't touch it. As they were pulling me away from mother, she pushed a piece of bread into my hand. She says, "You take it, you'll need it." And that was the last I saw of my mother. After the war, I was lucky to find my 2 younger sisters survived. She told me when they separated me from her and mother, they separated her because she was young for work, and mother they took to the gas chamber. That was in August 21st, 1944. My mother was at the time 60 years old. So in Auschwitz, we got out, we had to go to a barrack, take off our clothes, our normal clothes, and then run in front of German doctors. There were sitting doctors with white frocks, and we had to run in front of them for some reason with one arm in the air like this and run in front of them. And they decided who's going to live and who's going to die. I was lucky to let me through. At the end of the barracks there were some Jews with little stools there, and they had razor blade, and they started shaving shaving us wherever we had hair. They shaved us, you know, with the same blade, maybe 100 people they shaved. They didn't shave like tear the hair out, you know. And then another guy was standing there with a bucket with some disinfectant, with a big brush, a paintbrush, and put wherever they shaved us. It was burning like hell. And they gave us those striped jackets and striped pants to wear. In Auschwitz, I was about 10 days. I don't remember exactly now how long I was there. It was like a nightmare, you know. And then again, they took us again to a railroad siding, again boxcars, and we got to go in again, like maybe 80 people standing up in boxcar. They put in some empty buckets, and then some buckets of water. They gave us a small piece of bread, a piece of salty margarine, and a piece of Blutwurst, German sausage, blood sausage. The Germans eat like blood sausage. They call it Blutwurst. And right away the people started, and they closed in about 80 people, and the train started going. And the people, everybody was starved. They started eating that bread and salty margarine and drinking water. I'm not going to describe what was happening. For 4 days and 4 nights, locked into that boxcar, going to Germany. A lot of people died right in there. Finally we came to Germany, to a sub-camp of Dachau, because Dachau wasn't a labor camp, Dachau was a concentration camp. So they built satellite camps around Dachau, about 10 or 11 camps. And again, we came to that quarantine camp, it was Kaufring camp number 4. Again, we had to go to a selection who's going to live and who's going to die. I was lucky, me and another 150 people that took us on trucks to a labor camp, a camp which they called camp number 10. The name of it was Utingam Ammersee. We came to that camp. The first day it was already late, but the next morning we had to send our pen, send a line, and the big hunter, the big men in the camp came over and screamed out, are there any carpenters over? Since I work with wood, you know what a carpenter is? Nagar. Nagar Binyan is a carpenter. So since I work with wood, I volunteered on carpenter. So me and another guy, they gave us some little thing to do, fine. The next day, the next morning, again counting, we were all there, counted up, and there were 2 German carpenters standing there, and the guy says to me, you go, you help them, the 2 carpenters. So I say, okay, boss. So I go with 2 carpenters, we go to the woods. And they tell me, you wait here, we're going to get some tools. So I'm standing there waiting for them to go get some tools. While I'm standing, all of a sudden I hear a German screaming, come here. And I look and I see this Germans walking with three of my friends walking there, and called me to come join them. He wanted a 4th guy. Since I was waiting for the carpenters, I didn't go, I was standing there. And he keeps on screaming, come here. And it comes close and close, and finally comes in front of me, and he hits me, and again, I'm starting bleeding all over. And I said, I wait, he hits me, I couldn't say anything, he just kept on hitting me. And grabs a hold of me like they come. And I had to go with those 3 other guys, went to some kind of a house there was some cement slab doing that stuff, just to make us work. And we were working really hard, carrying these cement slabs, big ones, until it started raining. So there was a house there, so we ran to the house to stand under the eave to keep from the rain. While I was standing there under the eave of the building, this German, the big guy who assigned me to the carpenters, comes right in front of me. Ach, da hier bist du versteckt, here you're hiding. I said, boss, I'm not hiding, I was working, and he hits me. He hits me again, and again I'm bleeding, and he grabs a hold of me like this and pulls me, come. As we walked away from the building, the German for whom I was working,